The wooden wheels splintered apart with a crack that echoed across the barren California desert like a gunshot, sending Delilah Davenport tumbling from the wagon seat into sand so hot it burned through her cotton dress in seconds. She lay there gasping, watching her two mules bolt away with the remnants of her broken wagon bouncing behind them, disappearing into waves of heat that made the horizon shimmer like water that did not exist. The September sun of 1876 beat down mercilessly, and Delilah knew with absolute certainty that she was going to die out here, alone, 23 years old with nothing but broken dreams and an empty canteen rolling away from her outstretched fingers. She had been traveling from San Francisco to meet her sister in a small settlement near the Arizona border, carrying everything she owned in that wagon. Her parents had died of influenza the previous winter, leaving her with barely enough money for supplies and the determination to start fresh somewhere new. The route should have been safe enough, following the established trails, but she had taken a shortcut a prospector had mentioned in passing, trying to save 2 days of travel. Now that decision was going to cost her everything. Delilah crawled toward a cluster of rocks that offered a sliver of shade, her throat already burning with thirst. She had drunk the last of her water that morning, confident she would reach the next town by afternoon. The wagon wheel had other plans. She pressed herself against the cooler stone and closed her eyes, trying to conserve what little moisture remained in her body. Her dark blonde hair clung to her neck in sweaty tangles, and her lips were already beginning to crack. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time became meaningless under the relentless sun. Delilah drifted in and out of consciousness, dreaming of her childhood home in Boston, of cool spring mornings and her mother's lemonade. She thought of all the things she would never do, never see, never experience. She had never been in love, never been kissed properly, never known what it felt like to have someone look at her like she was their entire world. The sound of hoofbeats might have been another dream, but then a shadow fell across her face, blissfully cool. Delilah forced her eyes open and saw a figure backlit by the sun, haloed in gold light like an angel. Maybe she was already dead. "Madam, can you hear me?" The voice was deep, urgent, decidedly human. Delilah tried to speak but only managed to croak. Strong hands lifted her head, and the most wonderful sensation in the world touched her lips as water trickled into her mouth. She drank greedily, desperately, until the canteen was pulled away. "Easy now. Not too much at once or you will be sick." Her vision cleared enough to see her rescuer properly. He was a cowboy, probably mid-20s, with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of whiskey. Dark hair curled from beneath his worn hat, and dust covered his clothes like he had been riding hard. A leather vest hung open over a blue shirt, and a gun belt sat low on his hips. He was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. "My wagon," she whispered, "broke. I saw the wheel marks and the wreckage about a mile back. Been tracking you for the last hour." He gave her another careful sip of water. "Name's Barrett Beaumont. I have a ranch about 10 miles north of here. Delilah Davenport." She tried to sit up, but the world spun violently. Barrett caught her before she fell. "You are in bad shape, Miss Davenport. I need to get you somewhere cool fast." He looked around at the empty desert. "My ranch is closest. Can you ride if I hold you?" She nodded weakly, not trusting her voice. Barrett lifted her as easily as if she weighed nothing, carrying her to his horse, a sturdy bay gelding that stood patiently nearby. He mounted first, then pulled her up in front of him, settling her against his chest. One arm wrapped around her waist to hold her steady while the other hand took the reins. "Hold on to me," he said softly near her ear. Delilah clutched his arm and felt the horse begin to move. The motion was gentle, but every step sent fresh waves of dizziness through her. Barrett held her firmly, his body a solid wall of warmth at her back. She could feel his heart beating steady and strong through his shirt. "Stay awake, Delilah," he said when her head lolled to the side. "Talk to me. Tell me about yourself." "Orphan," she managed. "Going to find my sister, Sarah. She married a shopkeeper, near Yuma. Long way from here. Where did you start?" "San Francisco. 3 weeks ago." Barrett made a low sound of concern. "You have been traveling alone for 3 weeks. Could not afford a guide." Her words were slurring. "Thought I could manage." "You are tougher than most men I know, making it this far." There was genuine admiration in his voice. "But this desert does not care about tough. It will kill you just the same." Delilah wanted to respond, but darkness was pulling at her again. She felt Barrett's arm tighten around her. "No, stay with me. Tell me about Boston. You have that Eastern accent. Born there," she whispered. "Green and cool. Water everywhere. Nothing like this hell. This desert can be beautiful too in its way. In the spring, after rain, wildflowers cover these hills in gold and purple. At dawn, the rocks turn pink and orange. The stars at night are so bright you can read by them." His voice was soothing, melodic. "I will show you when you are better." "Why?" The word came out barely audible. "Why what? Why help me? Could have left me." Barrett was quiet for a moment. The horse's hooves made a rhythmic sound against the hard-packed earth. "My mother died in this desert when I was 12. She and my father were traveling to California to start fresh. Their wagon broke down, and by the time help arrived, it was too late. My father never forgave himself. He drank himself to death within a year." His arm tightened slightly. "I will not let that happen to someone else if I can prevent it." Delilah felt something crack open in her chest at the pain in his voice. "I am sorry," she whispered. "Not your fault. But you are not dying today, Delilah Davenport. I promise you that." She believed him. Something in his voice made it impossible not to. She let herself relax against him, trusting him completely even though they had just met. The world faded in and out, but Barrett's voice kept anchoring her, telling her stories about his ranch, his horses, the cattle he was raising. He told her about his foreman, an older Mexican man named Rodrigo who had taught him everything about ranching. He told her about the mountains to the north, where he would take the cattle in summer to escape the worst heat. When Delilah opened her eyes again, they were approaching a sprawling ranch house made of adobe and wood, with a wide porch wrapped around 3 sides. Cottonwood trees provided shade, and she could hear water running somewhere nearby. It looked like an oasis, impossible and perfect. "We are here," Barrett said gently. "You made it." Several people rushed out as Barrett dismounted and carefully lifted Delilah down. A middle-aged Mexican woman with kind eyes took charge immediately, speaking rapid Spanish to Barrett while examining Delilah with practiced hands. "This is Consuela," Barrett explained. "She runs my household and has healing skills. You are in good hands." Consuela and another younger woman, who looked enough like her to be her daughter, helped Delilah inside to a cool, dim room. They stripped off her dust-covered dress and bathed her with cool water, careful and gentle. They made her drink small amounts of water mixed with something that tasted like herbs, rubbed salve on her sunburned skin, and dressed her in a soft cotton nightgown before tucking her into a bed more comfortable than anything she had experienced in months. "Rest now," Consuela said in heavily accented English. "You are safe here." Delilah wanted to thank her properly, to ask where Barrett had gone, to understand what was happening, but sleep claimed her before she could form the words. She woke in darkness, disoriented and panicked. Her throat still burned and her skin felt tight and painful. For a terrible moment, she thought she was still in the desert, still dying under that merciless sun. Then she heard the sound of water and footsteps, and lamplight bloomed softly across the room. Barrett appeared beside the bed, still dressed but with his hat removed and his hair tousled. "Easy," he said quietly. "You are safe. You are at my ranch." Memory flooded back. Delilah tried to sit up and gasped at the pain in her sunburned arms and face. Barrett helped her, propping pillows behind her back, then offered her a cup of water. "Slow sips," he reminded her. She obeyed, letting the cool liquid soothe her ravaged throat. "How long was I asleep?" "About 6 hours. It is past midnight now." "Consuela said to let you sleep, but to make sure you drank when you woke." He settled into a chair beside the bed, the lamplight casting shadows across his handsome face. "How do you feel?" "Like I was roasted alive." She managed a weak smile. "But alive, thanks to you. You gave me a scare when you passed out during the ride. I thought I had been too slow getting to you." "You saved my life, Mr. Beaumont." "Barrett, please." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "And I only did what anyone decent would do." "I think we both know that is not true. Plenty of men would have ridden past." She studied him in the lamplight, this stranger who had pulled her from the jaws of death. "Why were you out there anyway? You said you had been riding hard." His expression darkened slightly. "Cattle rustlers hit my northern pasture last night. Took about 20 head. I was tracking them but lost the trail in the rocky country. I was heading back when I saw the buzzards circling and decided to investigate." He met her eyes. "Lucky for you." "Lucky for me," she agreed softly. "Barrett, I need to ask something difficult." "Anything." "My wagon. My mules. Everything I owned was in that wagon or running away with those animals." She felt tears prick her eyes but refused to let them fall. "I do not have money to pay you for your help. I have nothing. I am not asking for payment. But I cannot just take advantage of your hospitality without giving something in return. It is not right." Barrett stood and paced to the window, looking out at the darkness. "Delilah, you nearly died today. The last thing I am worried about is compensation." He turned back to her. "When you are stronger, we will figure things out. For now, you need to rest and heal. That is all that matters. But I should leave as soon as possible. Get to my sister. She is expecting me and she must be worried. In your condition, you would not make it 5 miles. You have severe sun damage and you were dangerously dehydrated. Consuela says you need at least a week of rest, probably more." He came back to sit down. "Send word to your sister. Let her know you are safe. When you are well enough to travel, I will personally escort you to Yuma." The kindness in his voice made those stubborn tears finally spill over. Delilah wiped them away angrily. "I am sorry. I am not usually this emotional. You have been through hell today. You are allowed to cry." He offered her a handkerchief, clean and soft. "My mother used to say that tears were just the soul's way of washing away pain." Delilah took the handkerchief and pressed it to her eyes. "She sounds like she was a wonderful woman." "She was." Barrett's voice went rough. "Tough as nails but with the gentlest heart. She once nursed a coyote pup back to health after its mother was killed, even though everyone said it would turn on her. She proved them wrong. That coyote followed her around like a dog for years. You must miss her terribly. Every day." He was quiet for a moment. "You remind me of her, actually. That same determination. She would have tried to make it alone across the desert too, convinced she did not need help from anyone." "Is that a compliment or an observation that I am stubborn and foolish?" Barrett laughed, a warm sound that filled the room. "Maybe both." Despite everything, Delilah found herself laughing too, though it hurt her cracked lips. The ease between them felt strange and wonderful. She had never met anyone she could talk to like this, without pretense or formality. Back in Boston, before her parents died, there had been suitors, but they had all been stiff and proper, more interested in her modest inheritance than in her as a person. Barrett was different. He looked at her like she mattered, like he genuinely cared whether she lived or died, and not because he wanted something from her. "You should rest more," he said, standing. "I will have Consuela bring you breakfast in the morning. If you need anything during the night, ring that bell." He pointed to a small silver bell on the bedside table. "Someone will come." "Barrett," she called as he reached the door. He turned back. "Yes, thank you for everything, for not letting me die alone out there." His eyes held hers for a long moment. "You are welcome, Delilah. Sleep well." After he left, Delilah lay in the darkness, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch at night. Somewhere outside, a horse whinnied softly. The wind rustled through the cottonwood trees. Water burbled in what must be a fountain or stream. It was peaceful here, safe, so different from the terror of the desert. She thought about Barrett's hands lifting her, his arms holding her steady on the horse, his voice keeping her tethered to consciousness. She thought about the pain in his eyes when he spoke of his mother, the determination when he promised she would not die. Delilah had heard about love at first sight in novels her mother used to read, but she had always dismissed it as foolish fantasy. Real life did not work that way. Yet something had shifted in her chest when Barrett looked at her, something that had nothing to do with gratitude and everything to do with the man himself. She touched her fingers to her lips, wondering what it would feel like if he kissed her. Then she shook her head at her own foolishness. The man had saved her life, and here she was spinning romantic daydreams like a schoolgirl. He had probably already forgotten about her, off dealing with his cattle rustlers and the 100 other problems a rancher faced. But when she finally drifted back to sleep, it was Barrett's face she saw in her dreams, Barrett's voice whispering that she was safe, Barrett's arms holding her like she was something precious worth saving. Morning came with golden light streaming through the window and the smell of coffee and fresh bread. Consuela entered with a tray bearing a simple breakfast of eggs, toast, and fruit, along with a pot of herbal tea. "You must eat," Consuela said firmly. "Your body needs strength." Delilah discovered she was ravenously hungry. She ate everything on the plate while Consuela watched with satisfaction. Afterward, the older woman helped her bathe properly and dress in a borrowed dress that was slightly too large but clean and comfortable. "You rest today," Consuela instructed. "Tomorrow maybe you walk a little, but today rest. Is Mr. Beaumont around? I would like to thank him again." Consuela's eyes twinkled knowingly. "He is with the cattle, but he will come see you later, I think. He has been up 3 times already this morning, asking if you had woken." Warmth flooded through Delilah. "Has he? That man, he does not usually worry so much." Consuela patted her hand. "You must be special." After Consuela left, Delilah explored the room properly. It was clearly a guest room, nicely furnished but impersonal. Through the window, she could see the ranch spreading out, corrals with horses, a large barn, several smaller outbuildings. Men moved about their work, and she caught glimpses of cattle in distant pastures. It was a prosperous operation, clearly well run. Barrett must be successful despite his youth. She wondered about his story, how he had ended up owning a ranch at probably 25 or 26 years old. Had he inherited it? Built it himself? There was so much she wanted to know about him. The day passed slowly. Delilah read from a book Consuela brought her, dozed intermittently, and watched the ranch activity from her window. She saw Barrett once, riding in with several other men, his figure unmistakable even at a distance. He moved with easy confidence, clearly in his element. It was early evening when he finally knocked on her door. Delilah called for him to enter, her heart suddenly racing. He came in carrying a bundle, looking tired but pleased. "You have more color today. That is good. I feel much better. Consuela is taking excellent care of me." Delilah gestured to the chair. "Will you sit? Tell me about your day. Barrett sat, stretching out his long legs. Found where the rustlers took my cattle across the state line. Sent word to the sheriff, but I doubt we will see those animals again. He did not sound particularly upset about it. The price of ranching, I suppose. That must be frustrating. It is. But I am more concerned about whether they will come back for more. He ran a hand through his hair. I have doubled the night watch for now. Is that expensive, the extra men, worth it if it protects my herd? He held out the bundle. I brought you something. The men found your wagon remains and gathered what they could salvage. It is not much, I am afraid. The mules scattered everything pretty thoroughly. Delilah took the bundle with trembling hands and unwrapped it. Inside were some clothes, somewhat worse for wear, her mother's silver hairbrush, a small Bible that had belonged to her father, and a leather pouch containing the few pieces of jewelry she owned. Tears sprang to her eyes. My mother's brush, she whispered, clutching it to her chest. I thought it was gone forever. The men searched thoroughly. They know how important personal items are. Barrett watched her with gentle eyes. I am only sorry they could not find more. This is more than I hoped for, thank you. She carefully rewrapped everything except the brush, which she kept in her lap, running her fingers over the smooth silver. Your men are kind to have gone to such trouble. They are good people. Rodrigo, my foreman, he insisted on going himself to make sure nothing was missed. I would like to thank him properly when I am well enough. He would like that. Barrett leaned forward. Delilah, I have been thinking about your situation. You were heading to Yuma to your sister, but you have lost everything you owned. Your stake for starting fresh. Yes. Delilah looked down at the brush, shame warming her cheeks. I will have to depend on Sarah and her husband's charity now, at least until I can find work. I am a decent seamstress and I can keep books. Surely there is something I can do to earn my way. What if you stayed here? Her head snapped up. What? Barrett held up a hand. Hear me out. Consuela has been saying for months that she needs help. The house is too big for her to manage alone, and her daughter Maria helps but has her own family to care for. I need someone who can keep the ranch books, handle correspondence, manage the household accounts. You would have your own room, meals, and a fair wage. Barrett, I cannot. Why not? He leaned forward earnestly. You need a place to stay and income. I need help that I trust. You could save money, and when you are ready, I will personally take you to Yuma with enough in your pocket to start properly fresh. Or maybe you will decide you like it here and want to stay permanently. You do not even know me. How can you trust me with your books and accounts? I know you were brave enough to cross California alone. I know you have integrity, or you would not be so worried about imposing on my hospitality. I know you are educated and capable. He met her eyes. And I know that when I look at you, I see someone I want to know better. Someone I want to have around. Delilah's heart hammered in her chest. Barrett, I am not asking for anything inappropriate, he said quickly. This would be a proper employment arrangement. You would have your privacy, your independence. But I am not going to lie and pretend I pulled you out of that desert and did not feel something shift inside me. He ran a hand through his hair, looking suddenly uncertain. Maybe that makes me crazy. Maybe I should have kept my mouth shut. But life is too short and too uncertain to not speak the truth when it matters. I felt it too, Delilah whispered. When I woke up and saw you, I thought you were an angel, and even half dead, I remember thinking you were the most beautiful person I had ever seen. Barrett's expression transformed, hope lighting his eyes. Then stay. Get to know this place, get to know me. If it does not work out, I will keep my promise and take you to Yuma, but at least give it a chance. Every practical bone in Delilah's body said she should refuse, should insist on going to her sister as planned. She barely knew this man. He was essentially a stranger who had happened to save her life. Accepting his offer would put her in his debt, dependent on his goodwill. But when she looked at Barrett, at the earnest hope in his whiskey-colored eyes, at the way he had literally carried her from death, she found herself nodding. "Yes," she said softly. "Yes, I will stay, at least for a while." The smile that broke across Barrett's face was like sunrise, brilliant and warm. "You will not regret it, I promise." "I hope we both do not regret it," Delilah said, but she was smiling too, unable to help herself. They talked until the stars came out, about everything and nothing. Barrett told her about growing up traveling west, about the uncle who had left him this ranch when he died 5 years ago, about building it from a struggling operation to the success it was now. Delilah told him about Boston, about her parents and her sister, about the dream she had harbored of finding her own place in the world when he finally left, long past when he should have. Delilah lay in bed feeling like her life had just taken a turn she could never have anticipated. A week ago, she had been alone in the world, heading toward an uncertain future with her sister. Now she was in the home of a man who made her heart race, about to embark on an adventure she could not begin to imagine. The desert that had nearly killed her had somehow delivered her exactly where she was meant to be. The next morning, Delilah woke determined to prove she could earn her keep. Consuela protested when she appeared in the kitchen, but Delilah insisted she was well enough to start light work. They compromised, with Delilah spending the morning reviewing the ranch accounts in Barrett's office while Consuela kept a watchful eye on her. The books were meticulous, but could use some reorganization. Delilah lost herself in the work, creating new systems and categories. It felt good to be useful, to apply her skills to something practical. Her father had insisted both his daughters learn mathematics and bookkeeping, saying a woman needed to be able to manage her own affairs. At the time, Delilah had found the lessons tedious. Now she sent a silent thank you to his memory. Barrett found her there at midday, bent over the ledgers with ink-stained fingers and intense concentration. He leaned in the doorway, watching her for a moment before speaking. Finding everything in order, Delilah looked up, startled. "Oh." "Yes, very much so. You keep excellent records. I am just reorganizing slightly to make the monthly summaries easier to prepare." "I have always meant to do that but never found the time." He came to look over her shoulder at her work. "This is perfect. Exactly what I needed." His proximity made Delilah acutely aware of him, the scent of leather and horses and something uniquely him. She forced herself to focus on the ledger. "You have expenses here that should be categorized differently. Equipment repairs versus animal care, for instance. And some of these vendors, you are paying different rates for the same supplies. I think you could negotiate better deals." Barrett laughed. "I knew you would be good at this. You have been here one day and you are already saving me money. It is my job now." She looked up at him. "I intend to earn my wages fairly. I have no doubt." His hand came to rest on the back of her chair, close enough that she could feel the warmth of it. "Are you well enough for a walk? I would like to show you around the property properly." "I would like that very much." They strolled through the ranch in the mild afternoon, Barrett pointing out the various buildings and operations. He introduced her to Rodrigo, a weathered man in his 50s with kind eyes and a firm handshake, who welcomed her in slightly better English than Consuela's. "It is good to have someone to help Consuela," Rodrigo said. "She works too hard, that woman, and Senor Barrett, he needs someone to organize his papers, always losing things." He winked at Delilah. "I am standing right here," Barrett protested, but he was smiling. They visited the horses next, and Barrett showed her his particular pride, a black stallion named Thunder who was spirited but beautiful. "I am training him for breeding. He will throw excellent foals." Delilah tentatively reached out to stroke the horse's nose. Thunder snorted but allowed the touch, his dark eyes curious. "He is magnificent. Would you like to learn to ride? I mean properly, not just being carried half dead." "I can ride a little. My father had a gentle mare back in Boston, but I am sure your horses are much more spirited than Buttercup." Barrett's eyes danced with amusement. "Buttercup, do not laugh. She was very sweet." "I am sure she was." He opened the stall of a pretty sorrel mare with a white blaze. "This is Cinnamon. Gentle as they come, but with enough spirit to be interesting. When you are feeling stronger, I will give you proper lessons." "I would like that." They continued the tour, and everywhere they went, the ranch hands tipped their hats respectfully to Delilah. She could feel their curiosity, their speculative glances between her and Barrett, but no one was rude or improper. These were good men who respected their boss and, by extension, anyone he chose to bring into his home. As they walked back toward the house, Barrett pointed to the north. "That is Winnetka, about 3 miles that way. Not much of a town, maybe 200 people. General store, saloon, church, blacksmith, the basics. We go there for supplies and church on Sundays when the circuit preacher makes his rounds. Will you take me sometime? I should introduce myself to the community. Of course, maybe this Sunday if you are up for it." He paused, looking suddenly uncertain. "Delilah, I should warn you, people will talk. A single woman living at my ranch, even as an employee, will cause gossip. Let them talk. I know my own intentions, and so do you. Anyone who wants to think poorly can do so without my concern." She said it bravely, but inside she worried. She knew how vicious gossip could be, especially in small communities. A woman's reputation was a fragile thing. Barrett seemed to sense her thoughts. "I will make sure everyone understands this is a proper business arrangement. Rodrigo and Consuela will vouch for your character, and so will I. Anyone who dares suggest otherwise will answer to me." The fierce protectiveness in his voice made something warm bloom in Delilah's chest. She had been taking care of herself for so long, first nursing her dying parents, and then making the treacherous journey west alone. Having someone willing to stand up for her to defend her honor felt both strange and wonderful. "Thank you," she said softly. They stood there in the golden afternoon light, looking at each other, and Delilah felt the pull between them like a physical thing. Barrett lifted his hand as if to touch her face, then seemed to think better of it and dropped it back to his side. "I should let you rest. Consuela will have my head if I tire you out on your first full day up." "I am feeling quite well, actually. Better than I have in weeks, honestly." All that travel was exhausting. "Still, you need to rebuild your strength," he smiled. "Besides, I have work I have been neglecting. Those reorganized books will not update themselves." Over the following days, Delilah settled into a routine. Mornings were spent on the ranch accounts and correspondence, working in Barrett's office while he handled the outdoor operations. Afternoons, she helped Consuela with household management, learning the rhythms of the ranch. Evenings, she and Barrett would often share dinner and then sit on the porch, talking as the desert cooled and the stars emerged. She learned that Barrett loved poetry, particularly Whitman, which surprised her. She learned he had taught himself to read music and played guitar, though he was shy about performing. She learned he was passionate about improving cattle breeds and had corresponded with ranchers as far away as Texas about bloodlines and techniques. He learned she had wanted to be a teacher, but that women's teaching positions in Boston required connections her family did not have. He learned she wrote in a journal every night and had half-finished stories, tucked away, that she was too embarrassed to show anyone. He learned she could calculate complicated mathematics in her head, but could not carry a tune to save her life. They learned each other, piece by piece, and with each revelation, the connection between them deepened. Sunday came, and true to his word, Barrett drove her into Winnetka in a small wagon. Delilah wore her best dress, salvaged and repaired from the wagon wreckage, her hair pinned up neatly beneath a borrowed bonnet. The town was indeed small, a main street with buildings clustered on either side. People stopped to stare as they passed, curious about the stranger with Barrett Beaumont. At the church, a simple whitewashed building with a wooden cross, Barrett introduced her to the preacher, Reverend Thomas, and his wife Dorothy. "Miss Davenport will be helping me manage the ranch accounts," Barrett explained. "She is staying in my guest room with Consuela as chaperone." Dorothy Thomas, a plump woman with shrewd but kind eyes, looked Delilah over carefully. "Welcome to Winnetka, Miss Davenport. I hope you will find our community welcoming." "Thank you, Mrs. Thomas. I am sure I will." During the service, Delilah was acutely aware of people glancing back at them, whispering behind hands. Barrett sat beside her, solid and unbothered, his presence a comfort. When they stood to sing hymns, their hands brushed on the shared hymnal, and Delilah felt that now familiar spark of awareness. After the service, several people approached to introduce themselves. Most were friendly, if curious. A few of the older women were more reserved, their eyes judgmental. One young woman in particular, a pretty blonde named Clara, seemed openly hostile. "Barrett," Clara said, her voice sugary sweet. "I did not know you were taking in strays." Barrett's expression went cold. "Miss Davenport is not a stray. She is my employee and, more importantly, my friend. I expect her to be treated with respect." Clara's smile turned brittle. "Of course, I meant no offense." She flounced away, and Delilah touched Barrett's arm. "Old flame, persistent hopeful," he muttered. "Clara has been trying to convince me to court her for 2 years. I have never been interested, but she does not take rejection well." "I see." Delilah filed that information away, feeling a small, unworthy stab of jealousy. Clara was beautiful, local, appropriate. Everything Delilah was not. As if reading her thoughts, Barrett leaned close and whispered, "You are worth 100 Claras. Do not doubt that for a moment." They stopped at the general store after church, and Barrett introduced her to the proprietor, a jovial man named Samuel who welcomed her warmly. While Barrett discussed supply orders, Delilah browsed the limited selection of goods, admiring some fabric she could never afford. "You like that calico?" Barrett appeared at her shoulder. "It is lovely. I was thinking I could make a new dress, something more suitable for the heat here. But it will have to wait until I have saved some wages." Barrett signaled Samuel and bought 10 yards of the fabric before Delilah could protest. "Consider it a work uniform," he said when she objected. "You need appropriate clothing for the climate." "Barrett, you have already done so much, and I will continue to do so because I want to, not because I have to." His eyes were serious. "Let me take care of you, Delilah. You have been alone and struggling for too long. Let someone help." Tears pricked her eyes. "You barely know me." "I know enough. I know what matters." He handed her the wrapped fabric. "Now let's get back to the ranch. Consuela promised to make her special tamales for dinner, and I do not want to miss them." The ride home was quiet but comfortable. Delilah watched the desert landscape roll past, thinking about how much her life had changed in just over a week. She had come west expecting to throw herself on her sister's mercy, to start over with nothing. Instead, she had found this place, this man, this unexpected possibility of something more. "What are you thinking about?" Barrett asked. "How strange life is. How one broken wagon wheel changed everything. Do you regret it? Would you rather have made it to Yuma safely?" Delilah considered the question seriously. "A week ago, I would have said yes without hesitation. Now—" She looked at him, at his strong profile and the way the sun caught in his dark hair. Now I think maybe that wagon wheel breaking was the best thing that ever happened to me." Barrett's hand found hers on the seat between them, warm and solid. "I am glad. Because finding you in that desert, Delilah, was the best thing that ever happened to me." They did not speak more, but their hands remained clasped the entire ride home, a promise neither was quite ready to voice but both understood. Weeks turned into months. Summer faded into fall, and the desert heat gave way to cooler nights and brilliant sunsets. Delilah's skin healed from its sunburn, fading to a light tan that Consuela assured her was healthy for the climate. She learned to manage the ranch books with confidence, catching errors and finding savings that delighted Barrett. She learned to ride Cinnamon, with Barrett as her patient teacher, his hands on her waist as he helped her mount, his voice steady as he coached her through gates and turns. They were careful not to be alone too much, conscious of propriety, but stolen moments happened anyway. A hand lingering too long when passing papers, standing too close in the barn while checking on a pregnant mare, glances across the dinner table that held heat and promise. Delilah knew she was falling in love, had probably been in love since that first moment in the desert. But Barrett never spoke of it directly, never pressed for more than friendship, and she began to wonder if she had misread everything. Maybe he saw her only as an employee, a friend, someone he had saved out of obligation and now felt responsible for. Then came the night everything changed. It was late October, and a storm rolled in sudden and fierce, the first real rain in months. Delilah woke to thunder shaking the house and rain pounding the roof like fists. She got up to close her window, which was letting water in, and noticed lamplight in the barn. Worried that something was wrong, she threw a shawl over her nightgown and ran through the rain to investigate. Inside the barn, she found Barrett with the pregnant mare who was clearly in labor and struggling. "What is wrong?" Delilah asked, hurrying over. Barrett looked up, his face tight with worry. "The foal is breech. I am trying to turn it, but she is in distress. What can I do?" "Hold her head, keep her calm. Talk to her." Delilah did as he asked, stroking the mare's neck and murmuring soothing nonsense while Barrett worked. It was intense and frightening, watching him with his arm inside the horse, his face concentrated and intense. The mare groaned and thrashed, and Delilah held on, trusting Barrett to know what he was doing. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, Barrett gave a triumphant shout. "Got it! The foal is turning." Minutes later, a tiny wet foal slid into the straw, impossibly fragile and perfect. The mare immediately began cleaning it, and Barrett sat back, exhausted and covered in blood and birthing fluids. "You did it," Delilah breathed, awed. "We did it." He looked at her, and something in his expression made her heart stop. Delilah, Barrett, they spoke at the same time, then laughed shakily. The foal was trying to stand on wobbly legs, the mare encouraging it gently. The storm raged outside, but inside the barn, everything was perfect and new. Barrett stood and came to her, leaving a proper distance but his eyes intense. "I cannot do this anymore. I cannot pretend that what I feel for you is just friendship or gratitude or anything other than what it is." "What is it?" Delilah whispered. "Love. I am in love with you, Delilah Davenport. I have been since I pulled you half dead from the desert, and you looked at me like I was something miraculous instead of just a man on a horse." He ran a hand through his hair, making it stand up wildly. "I know it is too soon. I know you might not feel the same way. I know I should keep my mouth shut and let things develop naturally, but I am not built that way. I need you to know that when I look at you, I see my future. I see my wife, the mother of my children, the woman I want to grow old with on this ranch." Delilah's heart was so full she thought it might burst. You are an idiot, he blinked, clearly not expecting that response. What? An idiot, she repeated, stepping closer. If you think for one moment that I do not feel exactly the same way. I love you, Barrett Beaumont. I probably loved you the moment you gave me that first sip of water and promised I would not die. You saved my life, and then you gave me a reason to live it again. Delilah. Her name was a prayer on his lips. Can I kiss you? If you do not, I might die of disappointment. He closed the distance between them and cupped her face in his hands, thumbs brushing her cheekbones. You are so beautiful, so brave and smart and beautiful. Kiss me, she whispered. He did. His lips met hers soft and searching, a question she answered by pressing closer. The kiss deepened, and Delilah felt like she was flying and drowning all at once. His arms came around her waist, pulling her flush against him, and she wound her hands into his hair, holding on like he was the only solid thing in a spinning world. They broke apart gasping, foreheads pressed together, hearts racing. Marry me, Barrett said. Delilah laughed breathlessly. You do not waste time, do you? We already established I am not built that way. I know what I want, and I want you. As my wife, my partner, my everything. His hands framed her face. Say yes, Delilah. Make me the happiest man in California. Yes, she said without hesitation. Yes, 1,000 times yes. He kissed her again, then pulled back with a rueful laugh. I just proposed to you covered in horse blood in a barn during a thunderstorm. That is possibly the least romantic proposal in history. It is perfect, Delilah insisted. It is us, real and messy and perfect. They stayed in the barn until the foal was nursing successfully and the mare seemed comfortable. Then they ran through the rain back to the house, laughing like children, soaked to the skin and deliriously happy. On the porch, Barrett pulled her close for one more kiss, sweet and lingering. I love you, he murmured against her lips. I love you too, so much. Tomorrow, I am taking you into town to buy a proper ring. Then we will see Reverend Thomas about posting banns. I do not need a ring, I just need you. You are getting a ring anyway, and the wedding you deserve, and every good thing I can possibly give you for the rest of our lives. Delilah rested her head against his chest, listening to his heart beat strong and steady. I already have everything I need right here. They married 6 weeks later, on a clear December day when the desert air was crisp and cool. Delilah wore a dress she had sewn herself from white silk, Barrett had ordered from San Francisco, with a crown of wildflowers Consuela had somehow coaxed to bloom despite the season. Barrett wore a new suit, his hair neatly combed, his eyes never leaving his bride. Sarah had come from Yuma with her husband Thomas, a kind man who clearly adored Delilah's sister. Sarah had cried when she saw Delilah, clinging to her and scolding her for the scare she had given them when she did not arrive as planned. But when she met Barrett and saw how he looked at Delilah, she had relaxed. He is good for you, Sarah whispered as they prepared for the ceremony. I can see how happy he makes you. He saved my life, Delilah said. No, honey, he gave you a reason to save your own life. There is a difference. The ceremony was simple but beautiful, held at the ranch with most of the community in attendance. Even Clara came, though she left early with a pained expression. Reverend Thomas performed the service, his wife Dorothy beaming maternally throughout. When Barrett slid the gold band onto Delilah's finger and kissed her as his wife, Delilah felt like she had finally come home. Not to a place, but to a person, to this man who had pulled her from death and given her a life more beautiful than she had ever imagined. The reception was lively, with food and music and dancing. Rodrigo played guitar, and several ranch hands joined in with various instruments, creating a joyful noise that echoed across the desert. Barrett danced with Delilah, holding her close, murmuring promises against her ear that made her blush. As the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, they stood together on the porch, watching their guests celebrate. "Happy?" Barrett asked. "Happier than I knew was possible." Delilah leaned into him. "Thank you for not riding past that day. Thank you for stopping. Thank you for surviving long enough to be found." He kissed her temple. "Ready to start our life together, Mrs. Beaumont?" "More than ready." That night, in the bedroom that was now theirs together, Barrett made love to his wife with a reverence that brought tears to Delilah's eyes. He was gentle and patient, taking his time to learn what made her gasp and sigh. Afterward, they lay tangled together, skin to skin, hearts beating in sync. "I never imagined I could have this," Delilah whispered in the darkness. "A home, a husband who loves me, a future full of hope instead of fear. You have all of it now, all of it and more." Barrett's hand found hers, their rings clicking softly together. "Whatever comes, we face it together." The years that followed were full, sometimes challenging, but always rich with love. The ranch prospered under their joint management, with Delilah's financial acumen and Barrett's ranching skills combining to create something greater than either could have achieved alone. They expanded their holdings, bought more land, bred horses that became sought after throughout California. Their first child came in the fall of 1878, a son they named Benjamin, after Barrett's father. He had his father's dark hair and his mother's quick mind, and he was utterly adored. Delilah discovered she loved being a mother, even when it was exhausting. Barrett was a devoted father, carrying the baby in a sling while he worked, talking to him about horses and cattle like the infant understood every word. 2 years later, a daughter arrived, Caroline, with her mother's blonde hair and her father's whiskey eyes. She was spirited and fearless, climbing trees before she could properly walk, always covered in dirt and utterly unrepentant about it. Another son followed, Daniel, quieter than his siblings but with a gift for gentling horses that showed itself early. Then another daughter, Eliza, who loved books and could read before she turned 4. The house filled with noise and laughter, with skinned knees and childish arguments, with bedtime stories and family dinners. Sarah visited often with her growing family, and the cousins became close friends. Rodrigo and Consuela became beloved honorary grandparents, doting on the children and spoiling them shamelessly. Through it all, Barrett and Delilah's love only deepened. They still took rides together across the desert in early mornings, just the two of them, watching the sun turn the rocks gold and pink. They still sat on the porch in evenings after the children were asleep, talking about everything and nothing, Barrett playing guitar while Delilah sang softly despite her terrible voice. On their 10th anniversary, Barrett took Delilah back to the place where he had found her. It was a pilgrimage they made every year, a reminder of where they had started. They stood hand in hand, looking at the barren landscape that had nearly claimed her. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if I had ridden a different way that day?" Barrett asked. "If I had been an hour later or decided not to investigate the buzzards?" "Sometimes," Delilah admitted. "But then I remember what you told me once about how the desert can be beautiful in its own way. I think maybe we were always meant to find each other here. Maybe every choice we made, every path we took, was leading us to this exact moment on this exact day. You think we were fated. I think we were lucky. And then we chose to be brave enough to take that luck and build something real from it." She turned to face him fully, this man who had saved her in every way a person could be saved. "I love you more today than I did on our wedding day, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today. That is my fate, Barrett Beaumont, loving you more with every passing moment." He kissed her there in the desert heat, the same sun beating down that had nearly killed her, now warming her skin as her husband held her close. When they broke apart, both were smiling. "Race you back to the ranch," Delilah said, her eyes dancing. "You are on, Mrs. Beaumont." They mounted their horses and took off across the desert, laughing like the young people they had been when they first met, racing toward the home they had built together, toward the children waiting for them, toward all the years still ahead. Behind them, the desert stretched vast and unforgiving, beautiful and deadly, the crucible that had tested them and forged something unbreakable. Ahead lay green pastures, a ranch house full of love and laughter, a future brighter than any sunset. And between those two places was the road they traveled together, side by side, partners and lovers and best friends, choosing each other over and over again with every sunrise, just as they had on that first desperate day when a cowboy found a dying woman and refused to let her go. The years continued to unfold with a sweetness that never faded. Their children grew strong and capable, each finding their own path while remaining deeply rooted in the family that loved them. Benjamin eventually took over much of the ranch operations, showing the same dedication his father had. Caroline married a rancher from a neighboring property, expanding their influence and creating bonds that strengthened the whole community. Daniel became renowned as a horse trainer, people traveling from as far as San Francisco to have him work with their animals. Eliza, their bookish daughter, became a teacher, fulfilling the dream her mother once had, opening a small school in Winnetka that served the region's children. Barrett and Delilah became the heart of their community, known for their generosity and fairness. They hired workers others passed over, gave credit when times were hard, opened their home to neighbors in need. The ranch became more than a business. It became a symbol of what was possible when people worked together with integrity and heart. On their 25th anniversary, their children threw them a celebration that brought people from across the state. Barrett and Delilah stood together, older now but still clearly devoted, watching their grandchildren play while Sarah regaled everyone with the story of how they met. "Can you imagine," Sarah said, laughing, "my sister writing me that she was delayed because her wagon broke down, and when she finally arrived she had a husband. I thought she had lost her mind in the desert heat." "Maybe I did," Delilah said, smiling at Barrett. "Maybe I am still lying in that sand, hallucinating this entire beautiful life." "If you are, then I am hallucinating too," Barrett said, pulling her close. "And I never want to wake up." As the sun set on their celebration, painting the desert in the colors Delilah had come to love, Barrett took her hand and led her away from the party to a quiet spot overlooking their land. In the distance, cattle grazed peacefully. Closer, horses moved through corrals, their coats gleaming in the fading light. The house glowed with lamplight and rang with laughter. "I have something for you," Barrett said, pulling a small package from his pocket. Delilah unwrapped it to find a silver bracelet engraved with a date, September 15, 1876, the day he found her. "So you never forget where we started," he said softly. "I could never forget." She held out her wrist so he could fasten it. "But Barrett, we did not start in the desert. We started every single day after when we woke up and chose each other again. That is what I want to remember, not the near death, but the life. All this beautiful, impossible life we built. Then let the bracelet remind you of that, of every choice, every moment, every day we chose love." Delilah kissed him as the stars began to emerge, the same stars that had watched over them that first desperate night, now witnessing their triumph. They had faced drought and illness, financial struggles and personal losses, all the challenges that life inevitably brought. But they had faced them together, and that made all the difference when they were old, white-haired and moving slower but still holding hands. Barrett and Delilah would sit on that same porch where they had shared so many evenings. They would watch their grandchildren play and tell stories about the old days, about wagon wheels breaking and cowboys appearing like miracles in the desert heat. "Tell us again how Grandpa saved you," the grandchildren would beg, never tiring of the story. And Delilah would smile at Barrett, that same smile that had captured his heart decades ago, and she would say, "Your grandfather saved me, that is true. But what he really did was show me that I was worth saving. He taught me that home is not a place you travel to, but a person you build a life with. And every single day since that moment in the desert, we have been building that home together, one day, one choice, one act of love at a time." Barrett would squeeze her hand, his eyes still bright with the love that had never dimmed, and add, "And the best part is, I would do it all again. Every moment, every challenge, every joy. Because it led me to her, and she led me to this life, and this life is more than I ever dreamed possible." Their grandchildren would sigh happily, satisfied with the fairy tale that was also somehow completely true, and run off to play. And Barrett and Delilah would sit together in the warm California evening, watching the sun paint the desert in shades of gold, thankful for broken wagon wheels and chance encounters, for choices made and promises kept, for a love that had started with desperation and grown into something eternal. In the end, the desert that had nearly taken Delilah's life gave her everything worth living for. And the cowboy who found her dying of thirst gave her an abundance of love that would never run dry, a well that deepened with every passing year, sustaining not just them but everyone their lives touched. That was their legacy, proof that sometimes the worst moments lead to the best lives, that courage and kindness matter more than anything, and that true love, once found, only grows stronger with time. They lived it fully, loved it fiercely, and when their time finally came, they left behind a family and community that carried their story forward, a testament to what is possible when two people refuse to give up on each other, or the beautiful, difficult, precious gift of life itself.